Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host, Connor Rebish. We are here for a double-header card for this UFC International Fight Week weekend, which is less of an event than it used to be. Remember, there used to be, this, big expo and all that, and I think there's still, something, but because they've gotten rid of a lot of the outside sponsors, they've kind of gotten rid of a lot of the, outside influence and the feeling like this was a major thing. Now it's just two fight cards right next to each other. That
fan interaction is hard work. I mean, just sell them the friggin' streaming service and don't talk to them again. Also, I thought you were talking about when you said that. I was going to agree. Yes, this event does feel like much less of an event than it did a day ago.
Yes. So for those that don't know, Brian Ortega versus Max Holloway has been canceled. Holloway dealing with concussion issues, it sounds like, is what I'm hearing.
Concussion-like symptoms, and the hope is that it's more to do with his weight cut, which we know has been getting harder and harder. Yeah. And that might just be the sign to relinquish the belt and move it to 155. But if it's genuinely concussion issues, get some, not for both for Max's sake and for the sake of fans. We all still remember TJ Grant.
Yeah,
and it's good that he's doing better now than he would have if he continued to keep fighting. But it sucks seeing what he was capable of. So, yeah, best wishes to Max.
It's hard not to think about the way Holloway fights too, when he really wants to break an opponent. And it's like the Jose Aldo fights. A lot of that was just walking into Jose Aldo and saying, "Okay, hit me a bunch really hard, and I can take it, and you can't. I can make you push a pace that you can't keep by letting you hit me."
And it's not like that's the heart and soul of Max's style.
No.
Going back to his fight with Jeremy Stevens, he can fight a much safer fight when it makes sense to. But it's also hard to look at him and think I don't know, and not think what's going on in training. What does your sparring look like? Yeah. How easy are you really taking it on yourself? Or have you?
I mean, even a fight like Ricardo Lamas, a pretty safe fight from him by all accounts, still had those moments where he just points to the middle and it's okay, let's go. Let's throw down. Let's brawl this out. See what happens. And that, when a guy starts getting concussion issues and stuff like that, you got to start worrying, because if that's always part of his training, part of who he is, and part of what he wants to bring into a fight, is that just going to go away?
Yeah. Well, we'll find out in the weeks to come, hopefully.
Yeah. Anyway, on that slightly depressing note, we are here to talk about this TUF 27 finale card. We're going to buzz through this because, frankly, it's just not that interesting a card. Even Tavares Adesanya is not a hard fight to break down. There's just not a lot going on this whole thing.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into UFC 226 and spend a little more time on that. I had teased previously that we might have a third person in the booth today, but the more I thought about that, the more I realized how much we already talk, and we had two full fight cards to go through. I just kind of decided not to.
I think you made the right call, Zane.
Maybe for a future card, maybe UFC 227 or something like that. We'll pull that idea back out.
If we have even the smallest amount of enthusiasm for a card, I remember we were just slightly more excited for the Singapore card that recently happened. And it was like a 2-hour episode.
I know. All right. On that note, we're going to dive right into the bottom of the TUF 27 card. Featherweight fight, Tyler Diamond, Bryce Mitchell. Connor?
Seems like a pretty simple dynamic, even just with a cursory look at their records. Diamond is more of sort of an all-rounder, decent finisher, but Bryce Mitchell is purely
way too long.
Bryce Mitchell's purely a submission fighter. He has been super aggressive in some of his fights and does seem to have, I don't know, more potential than the likes of Tyler Diamond. But yeah, what the hell? I'm going to go with Mitchell.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get a takedown. It's as simple as that.
All right. Tyler Diamond seems like he's the better wrestler. I think he can stop Mitchell from taking him down, and with that top position, I don't think Mitchell is going to be able to get subs in the UFC. So I'm going to go Diamond, basically.
How do people do this? Some people's whole breakdown show is at this clip.
I don't know. All right, odds on this. God damn it! I didn't have these pulled up ahead of time.
Damn it, Zane.
I know. Diamond versus
Silk.
Mitchell is not actually listed on the odds, so
All
moving
right.
right along.
Yep.
Middleweight fight: Gerald Meerschaert, Oscar Pichota.
I
Pichota
like this
is
fight.
the prospect. Meerschaert has kind of made a career out of killing the prospects off and being a sneaky tough fight. Still, Meerschaert, most of the way he has to create offense is just by running after people, being aggressive, being a little wild and sloppy. He's got a lot of funk to his game. I think that should give Pichota's good counter game a chance to pick him off, especially the left hook. And I think Pichota's actually a more technical wrestler and grappler, even if he's not necessarily as aggressive a finisher. And but if not, if Meerschaert can drag him out, make Pichota lead a little or something like that, then Meerschaert obviously has ways to win this fight. He's much more experienced, but I'm picking Pichota.
Yeah, buried as it is among like completely meaningless tough quarterfinals and whatever they are. This is actually like a really good fight, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Pichota is an interesting, really well-rounded and very sharp, like sort of cold, calculated kind of prospect, thinking prospect. And yeah, Meerschaert's a prospect killer, like you said. Super durable, super relentless. Meerschaert doesn't really, he's not quick. He's not crazy aggressive, but he just keeps on going. And Pichota should be able to handle that. He seems to be in good condition. And yeah, like the thing with Meerschaert that you just always notice is how open his chin is. Were he to be fighting slightly quicker fighters than the likes of like Sam Alvey and the kind of people he typically fights, middleweights, then the way he leaves his chin hanging out, there would be a serious liability. I think Pichota is sharp enough to pick up on those kinds of openings with the quick, precise style that he chooses to fight in. I'm a little nervous for Pichota's sake about Meerschaert on the ground. Like Pichota's very confident in his ground game, and I kind of worry about his strength, his like innate athletic ability relative to other middleweights, and I think Meerschaert is sneaky strong and very technical on the ground. So there's a danger zone there, but Pichota can do everything very well. So Pichota's the pick for me too.
All right, odds on that: Pichota is the favorite. Opened at minus 215, adjusted up and down to minus 167, and slid right back out to minus 227. Meerschaert opened at plus 165, adjusted up and down to plus 121, and has slowly risen back up to plus 181. Honestly, I think those odds could be a little closer to even. I like Pichota as a favorite, but Meerschaert is a tough level of competition that Pichota hasn't really actually faced yet. So
Meerschaert's been doing this forever, and he's won almost all of his fights. So
yeah,
it's not to be overlooked.
All right, that brings us to a featherweight bout: Matt Bessette versus Steven Peterson.
Yeah, it's weird. Like in a lot of ways, I think these guys are going to want to have exactly the same fight with each other. It'll probably be a fun fight, given the way that most of their bouts tend to look. My read on Steven Peterson, especially after that Brandon Davis fight, like he brings a lot to the table. He could outwork Bessette, but I'm kind of concerned about his ability to adjust. I don't think he can really like change anything up on the fly all that well. Bessette, on the other hand, has some counter punching ability, has the ability to read and change things up a bit as the fight goes on. Very experienced against good opposition. So I'm going with Bessette.
All right. I'm going with Bessette as well. I think the big thing is honestly that Peterson's not he's not much of a killer. He's not an early finisher. He tends to wear people down as the fight goes on. And that is really exactly Matt Bessette's game as well. He also tends to get stronger as the fight goes and the difference being that Peterson tends to just kind of wear you out by being constantly aggressive, and Bessette tends to actually get more confident and controlled and better pick his shots and change things up as he goes.
Peterson's kind of a wind-up toy.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a little more faith in that for Bessette. My worries are that he's lost to guys like Scott Cleave and Joe Proctor over his career. So there's definitely a chance that just somebody who stays on him and stays after him can win decisions like that. Otherwise, it tends to be people that come in and knock him out early while he's cold, and don't give him a chance to really feel his way into the fight. But I don't trust Peterson to do that, so I think Bissett will take it. He's just a better, more skilled fighter as the fight goes on. Neither guy really has any one big advantage, though.
Mm-hmm.
Bissett is currently the favorite, opening at -177, adjusting up and down to -138, and has drifted back out to -166. Peterson just opened at +143, up and down to +10 or 108, and has risen up to +138. I think it's about right.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Be a slight favorite, but not much of one.
No, and really, it's just like Bissett has probably a little more name recognition, and that's probably explains it. It's going to be an even.
I like the way he squares up and stays in the pocket to throw combinations. Peterson really just tends to jump in on straight lines, and he's either jumping in, throwing wild, or jumping in for a takedown, and he gets pretty predictable.
But even so, Bissett's going to be standing there with a guy who is constantly jumping in, trying to do shit.
Yep, exactly. All right, that brings us to a lightweight bout. John Gunther versus Alan Zuniga. Gunther should win this. Zuniga looks like a guy who was competitive on the lowest circuit of MMA and looks ridiculously undersized as a lightweight and not athletic at all. And watching his tough fight was just kind of like, you kidding, right? You pick this guy amongst a sea of undefeated fighters in the world. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's Zuniga's record. Like in some ways, it looks better than Gunther's. But like you watch his fights, and it's like most of his opponents just aren't really testing him in the way you expect a guy like Gunther to test him. Like you can knock Gunther for diving right into a guillotine against Giannetti.
Oh, but, Gunther is totally wild and unstructured and not good. But
Zuniga wants you to wait so he can throw a left kick every now and then. Yeah. And I just don't see that working out well for him against Gunther.
Yeah. Gunther looks like a lightweight. Zuniga looks like a bantamweight who has not dieted and is probably not that good an athlete to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Odds on the fight. Zuniga is their odds are all over the place. He opened at -130 and has just adjusted up and down. He's at +140. The odds just opened, so there's not really anything to say. Probably one book has them switched because they have him as a -160 favorite on one book, and Gunther is opened at -110, is currently -146. Honestly, if they end up ±200, that would probably be about right in Gunther's favor.
Yeah, that works for me. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't care. I don't care at all.
Next up, lightweight fight: Luis Pena versus Richie Smullen. Violent Bob Ross.
Yeah, this is one people care about. I have been off the Violent Bob Ross train, not by choice, but because, well, I guess by choice, but I just don't care about the Ultimate Fighter anymore.
Yeah,
but he's fun. He's a fun fighter to watch.
Honestly, I'll say this: looking at the tape of I think he was clearly the best all-around fighter out. Yeah, on that show, he looks it.
Yeah, I think you're right. He can maintain a really solid pace at a really impressive work rate for a guy who likes to throw a lot of kicks and fight from long range. If you just keep running into the end of his jab, running into his left hand, he likes to keep the work rate up. There's also the fact that he's gone to AKA and has been there, I think, for the past few months, which, seeing what they did with another tall, long fighter in Luke Rockhold is maybe not the best sign in terms of his striking technique, but in terms of, he already doesn't have Rockhold's chin issues or Rockhold's complete breaking down under pressure tendency. Seems a little more confident than that. And already seems a little better defensively than Luke Rockhold, and I don't say that as a joke. So I don't know. I think really what he's going to worry out here is fighting off in the clinch, and AKA is a very good choice for winning that kind of battle even more decisively than he was already able to on the show. So I like Violent Bob Ross to win it.
Yeah, the thing is, Smullen just doesn't. He just looks like a generic, oh yeah, he's an okay young kid who has a generic MMA game and kind of competes everywhere, can wrestle offensively a little, gets put on his back, and throws like a good low kick, right hand, doesn't look like anything at all, and she should just get outpaced and pieced up by Pena.
Yeah, and just in terms of build, he is going to be dwarfed by Pena in this fight. He's not
like Zuniga. He's definitely not in the right weight class. Unlike Zuniga, he actually looks like he might develop to be a reasonable athlete. Maybe still not a UFC caliber one, but
likely at featherweight.
But likely at featherweight. Pena is the favorite, opened at -290, adjusted up and down to -230, is slid out to -356. Smolin opened at +210, adjusted up and down to +230, and is currently at +278. I like those odds where they are, honestly. Pena, like I said, I think he's probably the best actual talent on that season, and the guy most likely to have a continuous UFC career, barring freak injury or chinniness or some other unforeseen thing. After that women's flyweight bout, Montana De La Rosa versus Rachel Ostovich. Ostovich should win this by being more composed. Both women tend to be, De La Rosa just likes to brawl her way into trouble. She's not a very good striker, but she just swings a lot and steps forward, gets hit, and then changes things up and tries to do whatever. Ostovich tends to only throw 1 or 2 strikes at a time, and they're not bad, but she gets hit in return and then kind of panics herself. Ostovich is just generally more controlled and more composed after that, though. De La Rosa is kind of an aggressive, throw something up at random fighter. Ostovich seems like she has a solid lock of positions and transitions and things like that. So I'll take Ostovich. That's about it.
Yeah, just stylistically, Ostovich, as you said, like she can be thrown off. She still kind of reads like an inexperienced fighter, especially with like the admiring your work kind of stuff in the pocket, leaving your chin out there after you land or throw. But like urgency and anxiousness are sort of like built into De La Rosa's style. Whereas like Ostovich, I've seen her many times, multiple times at least, recover from an uncomfortable circumstance and come back to re-control the bout. And I agree. Control on the ground is probably going to be the deciding factor, as it is in most of her fights.
Yeah. Let's see. Ostovich is the underdog here for reasons that I cannot possibly articulate. Opened at -120, adjusted up and down to +155, is currently at +153. De La Rosa is opened at -120 and adjusted up and down to -188 and is currently at -184. I guess somebody really liked Montana De La Rosa's ability to get absolutely tagged up and then pull guard for an armbar debut. Like,
you're a savage thing.
I don't know what. Like, oh, she got hammered by Christina Marks, who's 8-8. That really, man, I loved watching that.
Yeah, but then she got a submission finish, which is definitely not in a phase where Ostovich is at her best.
Yeah.
So think about that. Yeah, it doesn't
make
make
any sense from that angle.
Doesn't make any sense to me either.
All right. Anyway, after that, a catchweight bout. Julian Marquez.
What's the point of that mispronunciation?
It's the moo. You got to fit the moo in there.
Okay.
Missing weight by 4 pounds. Missing weight by Lineker.
It was the awkward pronunciation that threw me. I didn't realize you were going for a moo there.
Yeah, Julian Marquez.
How about Julian Marquez?
Marquez, there you go. Julian Marquez. Yeah. Versus Alessio de Chirico. And I am really, really thrown on this fight. Honestly, I'm going to make it quick, but...
I can tell because it's supposed to be my pick.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay, go for it.
I don't give a shit.
Okay.
First thing I want to say, Julian Marquez looks exactly like the guy you would expect to miss weight. His beard alone must add 5 pounds to his overall weigh-in. Yeah, this is a weird fight. Like, mostly because these are weird fighters. Like, Marquez is a throw everything with heat, brawl, like counterpunch your way into a brawl the moment the fight begins sort of fighter. and then get exhausted and then just keep fighting through it. That happens a lot with him. He has no first, second, or third gear.
No.
And then Chirico is just kind of I don't know. He's got an interesting style. It's kind of hard for me still to get a handle on like how exactly he's best at fighting. He does a lot of nothing, like in between being sometimes surprisingly effective, as was the case with that knockout over Bang Bosch in the worst fight ever until the knockout happened. So, boy, should I just take an easy route and say that people who miss weight have been winning their fights?
Yeah, go for it.
No, I think no, actually, I think that I kind of like Chirico here because I have seen him fight a smart kind of fight, and I'm not sure how much Julian Marquez can actually adjust the way he's fighting on the fly or even beforehand, how much strategizing he's capable of doing. I think I'm sort of expecting Chirico to come in here, fight the right kind of fight, keep a long distance, peck away, and not give Marquez the chance for the brawl that he wants. So I'm going to go with Chirico in a possibly more boring fight than we're hoping for.
Yeah, that's kind of my read too. I am honestly like I'm second guessing it because Marquez missed weight.
Yeah.
But he fights like an amazingly unstructured newcomer who just rolls through with aggression and figures that and toughness will carry him.
Yep.
Without necessarily having the training or conditioning or depth of skill. Like he's definitely the better athlete, the more natural athlete, I would say, than Chirico. And Chirico has a problem in that he's not coordinated enough to throw combinations. Like he can throw really pretty single strikes, but you watch him throw, like he's got a really nice educated lead left hand and left hook that makes you think like, oh man, that's pretty, that looks great. And then you watch him fall with the right hand and he drags his whole right side of his body behind it and gets squared up and off balance.
He throws every punch like he's fencing. He's got GSP syndrome.
Yeah. And it means he's never going to be a very good combination striker unless he can seriously figure out how to, like, I don't know, you can teach that kind of coordination if you don't have it.
I think it's a technical thing.
But he's patient and he's calm and he's collected. And if Marquez can't knock him out within 5 minutes, I don't know how Marquez wins this fight. He's easy to take down. He's got no control of range. And Chirico's never been KO'd. You can point to him getting subbed by Eric Spicely, but that was Eric Spicely off his back. And Marquez, his one guillotine submission over one of the worst submission defenders out there, and Darren Stewart gives me no confidence in him being
It's the only time I could think of in which Chirico like willingly gave his opponent the wrong kind of fight. And in fairness, looking at Eric Spicely versus looking at Julian Marquez, you'd probably be easier to underestimate Spicely than it is to underestimate a guy who looks like Marquez.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to take Chirico too. There's always a chance he gets sparked out in the first few minutes just watching. But if not, I like him to win. Chirico opened at plus 160, adjusted up and down to plus 111, and is currently at plus 133. Marquez opened at minus 210, adjusted up and down to minus 141, is currently at minus 160. All right. Nothing to say for that, honestly. I don't care. Women's flyweight bout next. Roxanne Modafferi, Barb Honchak. I am going to pick Modafferi, not because I think she's at all a better fighter than Barb Honchak, but because Barb tends to check out in fights and just not work very hard. And Modafferi is all working hard. Like that's all she does. To her detriment, she doesn't really have the athletic ability to keep her cardio going and be as, stay as composed as she wants, but she's going to keep throwing combos and she's going to stay on Honchak. And I mean, it's how Honchak lost to Lauren Murphy, and Murphy is a better athlete than Modafferi, but she also is much less of a aggressive, consistent kickboxer. So I'll take Honchak to take a weird, ugly loss that she doesn't need to and shouldn't.
Yeah. It feels weird picking Modafferi against like a really established top fighter like Honchak. Like Modafferi just looks like her bones are made of Pocky. Like it's really weird, right, to look at the two of them and be like, oh yeah, Roxanne Modafferi, whose most famous thing before recently was getting slam KO'd over and over.
And Honchak has beat her before.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I didn't forgot they'd even fought before 7 years ago, which is insane.
I know.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree though. Like the big thing with Roxanne is her process has gotten much better in recent years. Like the way she approaches fights is just a lot more direct now, and that is precisely the problem that Honchak has been having. I think Honchak is really like probably nearing the end of her run, which is no shame because she's 38 now. But like credit to Lauren Murphy, but Honchak as Invicta champion, it would have been a really bad look to lose your title to Lauren Murphy. Like, let's be honest, Murphy's whole thing is just like outworking people very crudely, and Honchak just kind of let it happen. And yeah, if you fight that way against Modafferi these days, there's a good chance that she'll have her fight too. So I'll take Modafferi as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would pick on a technical level, point for point. I'd pick Honchak to beat her every day of the week, but
it's not like the Laura Murphy fight was the first fight lately where I've been like, what's going on with Honchak? Like the last fight before that too, she was very, I don't know, uninspired.
Yep, it's just been kind of her thing.
Yeah,
like that Takeo Hashi fight. Like Hashi is 40, and Honchak just kind of like carried her for.
Yeah, she carried her. That's the way to put it. It's not like it didn't ever seem at any point that she couldn't have done more. She just didn't feel like it or didn't think to, or I don't know.
It's just weird.
Or maybe couldn't.
Honchak is the favorite, which is fine. Makes sense. Opened at -170, has bounced up and down all the way through, and is currently at -175. Modafferi opened at +130 and has risen steadily up to +146. After that, featherweight bout, Alex Caceres, Martin Bravo. Go ahead.
This sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be fair. Most matchups with Alex Caceres sound like fun, even if sometimes they're extremely frustrating. But Bravo is like people may have forgotten how much fun he looked like in his first UFC fight after he got melted by a 30 seconds into his first round by a knee from Humberto Bondanai. Bravo is like a Diaz brother in a lot of ways. He tends to be aggressive. He's got long arms. He works behind a good jab. He works the body very well. Defense is not spectacular, but he does not let you get a shot off without trying to return something. And he doesn't lack technique or craft. He's hittable, but he's a decent boxer. And Caceres is Caceres. He's like a complete grab bag of random skills that could appear in any random assortment on any given day. He looked bad against Wang Guan. He just was like running into shots over and over again, didn't seem to have any idea of how to use his reach. And like, you're Alex Caceres, you should not be leaping across the pocket to get countered with the same left hook over and over again. You don't have to do that. But that's Alex Caceres. God, I think I'm going to take a flyer on Bravo because barring a crazy knockout like the Bondanai one, I think he just has a consistent sort of style. He has a way of fighting that he is comfortable with, and that has always been Caceres' problem, is that it's so easy to throw him off his game, and there's no telling what thing is going to throw him off his game. But getting hit early tends to be a problem that will keep him from adjusting as the fight goes on, and Bravo is going to hit him early. So I'm going to go with Bravo.
Yeah, I just worry that Bravo's... Like, I worry that Bravo's style depends on a level of physicality that he doesn't have in the UFC. And that Caceres, like, here he's just a much better athlete. He's more technical, or he's more fluid, not even necessarily more technical, but much more fluid in any of his single strikes. And more well-rounded, a better wrestler, a better grappler when he chooses to be.
If Caceres wrestles, the question is, will he? But if he wrestles, it's a much easier matchup.
So I'm going to pick him to take it on that. But, I mean, he also lost to Jason Knight, who we've seen does not have a style made for upper-level MMA.
Yeah.
And he lost to Wang Guan just because he decided to kickbox with somebody who's an infinitely better kickboxer than him.
Yeah. It's the Jason Knight fight for me. Like, the pressure and the volume really
I just worry that Bravo doesn't even have the physicality of Knight. And that beating Puelles doesn't prove anything to that effect. So I'm going to take Caceres here to just kind of be crazy and crafty and pick Bravo off with hard shots as he walks in. But if he doesn't, then there's a very good chance that Bravo just stays on him and beats him via volume. That's the other thing is Caceres is, at least he's very tough. So if Bravo can't knock him out, then it could end up being
it's true. Fight. I don't typically trust Caceres to like come back, even though he has done it before.
Yeah.
But he has done it before. So if Bravo starts like noticeably slowing down as a result of his own pace, Caceres can slip in a rear naked choke out of nowhere. He's that kind of fighter.
Caceres opened at minus 135 and adjusted up and down to minus 124, dropped sharply down to 143 and has risen back up a bit to minus 134. Bravo opened at minus 105, adjusted up and down back to minus 105, rose up as high as plus 121, has dropped back to plus 110. Honestly, this deserves to be pretty close to even. Just the way Caceres fights means every fight he has is going to be nip-tuck unless he can just pull out some crazy dominant thing early on, which...
Unless he can have the 2 rounds he had against Cole Miller.
Yeah.
You never know.
Looked unbeatable and then let Cole Miller back in the fight for no apparent reason
Cole Miller famous for being able to come back very well.
Yeah.
Got back into the fight.
Featherweight bout next, Brad Katona versus Jay Cucciniello. And I feel like I've already forgotten who these people are.
I know, right? I just had to like scroll back up to the bracket to be like, which of these guys' tough fights did I watch? Okay, this was the one.
Okay.
Katona is like Cody Stamen, but like less crafty.
Oh, that's right. I'm picking Katona basically just by being kind of a bricked up little basics, like bare fundamentals, wrestle boxer kind of fighter who seems good enough. Cucciniello's grab bag, he's a much better striker, I think, just from a technical standpoint. But his grab bag of regional UK, Spain, and South Africa wins don't give me much faith in him, and I don't really feel like he can control where the fight goes or how it goes there. If Katona can't get him down, then he probably loses a slow kickboxing decision. But I'll pick Katona to win it on just kind of physicality and having a multi-dimensional game.
Yeah. I said that Katona reminds me of Cody Stamen. That's because he does. I think it's a pretty solid comparison. He's like a less developed Cody Stamen. And not just in build, like he's strong and squat. He has the kind of build that's like good for power, both in terms of punches and kicks, but also in wrestling. It's easier for him to get under a lot of people's bases. He stays light on his feet, seems to move really well. And even though his game is like his striking, for example, is extremely meat and potatoes, like his first fight on the Ultimate Fighter was pretty much all about either the lead left hook or the lead right low kick.
Yeah.
And playing those two things off each other, but then like he did that. He played two things off of each other and maintained control of a bout. I think he's at risk of like running out of ideas if he starts playing to Cucciniello's tempo. Like he does strike me as a fighter who doesn't fully know he can come up with new ideas or keep reconfiguring the old ones as long as he's in control. But Cucciniello can get aggressive and bomb, and I can see Katona being in trouble there. But Katona also seems like a really capable wrestler, and seems like a good enough athlete that he will probably continue getting better in that department. And I think his strength and his well-roundedness are going to be the key here.
Yep. Odds on that fight. Katona just opened at -145 and is already up to -260. Cucciniello opened at +105 and is already up to +180.
It is. How crazy is it that they are persisting in having this show when clearly Dana White's Contender Series is a much more attractive vehicle for this kind of premise at this point?
Single fight contracts that pay like $5 to $10 grand for one fight for a regional MMA talent, where they have no further obligations to the promotion unless they get a big contract afterward. That is way, way more attractive than getting a guy like Alan Zuniga for a full season of TUF.
Because you picked the theme undefeated and now you're handcuffed to it, and you can't find anyone better who's willing to be on this stupid show.
Yes.
Like, the TUF sucks. TUF has gone downhill, but it really, really sucks now.
Yeah. All right. Up next, Mike Trizano versus Joe Giannetti. This is a pretty easy pick. Giannetti seems like he's always going to be kind of a funky, like, what if Cody McKenzie actually trained hard and wasn't crazy? Then he's probably going to win 3 out of every 5 fights he's in just by being crazy and crafty and tough. And we've seen even like guys like James Vick kind of play that same card into a very long and successful career and get a lot better over time. Giannetti seems like that kind of guy. Like, he's just got a super sneaky sub game. Unlike Mitchell, it's the kind of thing like, just whatever you give me, I'm going to work with it and I'm going to make a submission happen. And Trizano just seems like a dude.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to come up with like a prescient critique of Trizano's game. It's very unremarkable, isn't it?
It's just, oh yeah, you're the kind of fighter who loses fight. Like, he's just kind of a generic. He's Tiger Schulman. That makes sense. He's just kind of a East Coast kickboxer. He's like, but it's like if you took what's his name, the featherweight
Burgos.
What?
Shane
Burgos. It's like if you took Burgos and you took all of the venom and the confidence out of his game.
Yeah, he doesn't stand out the way like Tiger Schulman has earned a pretty good reputation in UFC level right now, because they've got Jimmy Rivera, they've got Shane Burgos, they've got Julio Arce. We've seen some good shit out of Uriah Hall, old school. We've seen some good shit out of Tiger Schulman guys, but Trizano just seems very generic. Like, he doesn't seem like he has I don't know. He neither has a style that seems to really work for him, like some of those guys do, nor, like Jimmy Rivera, does he have like a really fluid, complete skill set that works for him. So, I mean, that being
work himself into a choke.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, like Giannetti still seems like he's very, very early into figuring out how his game works.
Oh yeah.
I think the Vic comparison is going to look better and better with time, because already he seems like he's understanding that people are trying to get around his reach and how to like use his height to work guillotines or uppercuts and knees in the pocket. Like, he's got an idea, but really it comes down to, I think Trizano is going to give him the fight he needs. It's going to be coerced or just forget what he's doing and start pressuring and dive under his armpit and get choked.
Yep.
So Giannetti
opened at -120, gone up and down a bit. The odds just opened like yesterday, and is currently at -145. Trizano opened at -120 and is just bounced up and down. Is currently at +115. That brings us to our main event: Brad Tavares, Israel Adesanya. Take it away.
Another soft test for the style bender. Like, basically, it's not as soft as the last one, but it's pretty much a slight upgrade from the last one, which was itself a slight upgrade from the fight before that. Essentially, they're like, well,
I think I would call it the hardest winnable upgrade.
Yes, yeah. Unless in this fight we see some genuine like changes and improvements out of Adesanya.
Yeah,
which could be the case. Maybe he got to work with Robert Whittaker on his wrestling a little bit. You never know.
Yeah, but he's been fighting so much lately. I don't even like his last fight was in April.
Yeah. He's trying to keep his name out there to like build his brand, but is it giving him enough time to sharpen up and improve? Yeah, I agree. The hardest winnable matchup because Tavares is certainly a good enough wrestler to use that against Adesanya, but he has throughout his career not used that as his first line of attack. And he is a good enough technical striker to hang with Adesanya, but has often seems very comfortable with a pace at which he could be picked apart by a more creative, more active striker. And then he's probably a little more fragile as well, maybe. I mean, Whittaker blew his head off, but that's Whittaker.
Yeah, it doesn't mean much.
So, like, it's simple. It's simple, but not exactly easy to call with any degree of accuracy because I can easily imagine Brad Tavares just coming forward behind low kicks and jabs, working his way into the clinch, and trying to grind Adesanya out. But part of me kind of doesn't expect him to do that. Tavares is also, even as he's like gotten a little more aggressive and a little bit better handle on his counter punching and all that, still starts slow. He's going to give Adesanya, I think, the slow start that Adesanya also wants. And by that time, I think it's going to be enough. It's going to be enough momentum for Adesanya to kind of build up and just land the better shots. Like
you're picking Adesanya?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think Tavares, like, he has the win up the victory right within reach, but I don't really know if he's going to take it, especially once he starts trading shots with Adesanya from long range. Is he going to start lunging for takedowns? Is he going to forget his striking? I don't know.
All right, I basically said this months out and got some heat for it, but I'm going to say it again. If Brad Tavares wins this, it is a damning mark on his career. Or if he loses this, rather. It is a damning mark on his career.
Because this is what you're supposed to do with all that experience. And
yeah, he's been in the UFC since 2010.
Yeah.
8 years facing well-rounded, high-quality UFC competition, and he's only lost 4 times in that time. And 3 of those were to people that are just bigger and tougher and, better wrestlers than he was.
Yeah.
One of them is to Robert Whittaker, who's not only a better kickboxer, but impossible to take down. If he cannot take Israel Adesanya down, it is just stupidly damning. I'm going to pick him. I mean, if nothing else, when he gets tagged up, he will like panic shoot, and he's got a good double leg, and he knows how to chase a takedown well, and he knows how to get positions and get to the back and ride.
He's a very, very good wrestler.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler. So even if he's getting tagged up a little, he should be able to use that out in open space where Adesanya's takedown defense is still abysmal. He's pretty good up against the cage, as we've seen. But Tavares should be able to handle this, and if he can't, then he's always going to be that guy who could climb to the edges of the top 10 and then fail spectacularly and fall way back.
I hope you're right, not just because I like Brad Tavares, but because I don't think we will see the best that Israel Adesanya has to offer as an MMA fighter until he takes the kind of loss you're predicting. Like, he needs to have it shown to him incontrovertibly that his wrestling is just not up to snuff. He needs to put on some damn wrestling shoes, get on the mat, and learn to wrestle.
Yeah, because Adesanya's wrestling at this point, like, he's got good... It reminds me of Randy Brown, where you watch him in small cages on the regional circuit. You're like, oh, he counter wrestles pretty well. He can get his back to the fence. He gets underhooks. He pulls people up. He knows how to sprawl out. Then you watch him in open space in the UFC where the cage is so much bigger, and anything that hits him in open space, he just falls over. He tries to sit on the fence in the middle of the cage.
Yeah. There's no footwork. There's no underhooks. There's no distance control. You can tell, like, the actual base wrestling skills are not there.
Yeah. So Adesanya he's a very good, fun fighter. But if Tavares can't figure that out, if Brad Tavares is as functionally bad as Marvin Vettori, then that is just, that's a terrible look.
I think he's going to strike with him like Vettori did and just lose on numbers.
Yeah, the Vettori one was easy to call because Vettori has literally never shot for a lower body takedown. Like, you go watch his fights and it's all like high clinch against the cage, try to pull somebody down. It's like, oh wait, he's not good. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, hopefully I'm wrong about both because I think I picked Vettori then.
Yep.
Expecting him to fight the smart fight. And I'm picking Tavares now because I don't want to disappoint myself by expecting the smart fight out of him.
All right. Adesanya opened at -117, dropped down to -185, and has risen steadily up to -133. Tavares opened at -117 and jumped up to +166 and has slowly trickled down to +108. Getting close to even. Honestly, if Tavares doesn't make those odds look stupid, then that's kind of a crying shame for him.
Yeah, he has every opportunity.
All right, UFC 226, jumping straight into the bottom, women's strawweight bout, Jamie Moyle, Emily Whitmire. Moyle should win this just by not being as bad. Whitmire is an okay wrestler, but a really not good athlete, and that Moyle is also not a good athlete, but she's more experienced, has an idea of how to counter. She wants to be a counter puncher, but she's kind of a wild brawler, and she's got an okay takedown game and a bit better grappling, and I don't know. Whitmire just looks bad. That's it.
Yeah, there's not really much more to add. Jamie Moyle is just a solid fighter. She's much better put together, has a reliable, processed way of fighting, and Whitmire is like sort of exactly what you would expect to come out of women's MMA if you watched it like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's Moyle.
All right. Up next, lightweight bout: Lando Venata versus Drakkar Klose.
Clearly, the matchmakers asked themselves, watching Drakkar Klose's last fight, they were like, okay, what happens if we put him in there against another striker who won't maintain his composure and continue fighting intelligently after having a point docked for being a good defensive fighter? Like, if Drakkar Klose starts taunting Lando Venata, how much you want to bet Venata is not going to have the maturity of David Tamor or Daniel Tamor?
I don't think Klose will ever get the chance to taunt Lando Venata.
True.
I think Venata is just going to be on the front foot, trying to pressure, trying to put combinations on him in the pocket.
Yeah, it's like a fun matchup. I'm still like, the UFC does not know what to do with guys like Venata, though. Like, this is case in point of that. And Venata's
Venata, Klose, Diakese, they've gotten all these really raw, exciting, athletic fighters in lightweight, and then they just are like, well, let's just smash them together and see who comes out on top.
Yeah, it's like a dumb kid with his fucking action figures, because Mike Perry's on this same card, and like they're like, well, we want him to give him time to develop, so we're not going to jump him up in rankings just yet. He's still going to fight lower ranked guys, but they're all going to be violent knockout punching maniacs. Like, give him a break. Let him fight. Why is Lando Venata not fighting any like wrestlers or submission grapplers or something? You know, give him something different.
Yeah, you watch the guys that Gregor Gillespie has fought, and it's just this like chain of sub grapplers or lanky strikers or whatever. You're like, where are these guys for the rest of these dudes?
Why hasn't Gillespie fought Drakkar Klose? You know, like.
Or why hasn't Venata gotten to fight Jason Gonzalez and Jordan Rinaldi?
Exactly. Yeah, it's because being exciting is as easily as much a curse as it is a blessing in the UFC. If you consign yourself to a terribly difficult and truly not just difficult in terms of winning fights, but a more dangerous schedule where you are absorbing punishment. And that's my concern about Venata. I don't really know like if he's going to be able to improve or fulfill the potential we all thought he had, because it's been nothing but wars. I mean, what was his last fight? Bobby Green.
It was that draw against Bobby Green where
a friggin' slugfest. Yeah, in which like Venata has gotten badly hurt in every fight except for the John McDessie fight where he got a quick knockout. 3 fights in the UFC, he has been badly hurt and had to fight for his life.
Ferguson, McDessie, Tamer, and Green. For a kid who's like, still had fewer, and now I guess he's had 12 pro fights. That's
Venata's going to do, like, he's going to probably do more damage than Tamor did because he's going to stand there and look to land multiple shots as when close comes forward. He's going to stick in the pocket, and the problem is that, like, Close beat Mark Jacasey because he could, like, tie him up in the clinch and outwork him. And Venata has not yet overcome the stamina hurdle because he throws a lot of energy away, both eating shots and trying to counter with everything he has. He's too emotional when he fights. He can't do what Tamor did against Close or what Tamor did against Venata. He can't just, like, turn off his emotions and fight scientifically. And so I'm going to pick Venata. I like his technique more. I think there's a very good chance Close just walks into something awful and gets put away. But it's going to be another one of those fights for Venata. So it could go either way, and this shit is gonna weigh on Venata going forward, man. I don't know how much more time we're gonna have left of him if we keep giving him the Mike Perry treatment.
Yeah, I'm the same. Close is he's too dependent. I mean, it's kind of the same thing for Close, where he's an incredibly good clinch fighter, but he's not a great wrestler.
Yeah,
he's not an amazing grappler. And he's not a very good outside striker. He's highly dependent on just sort of a long jab, an overhand, and a low kick. And he doesn't have bad timing on those because he's a good athlete, but it's a limited arsenal. And, everybody gets a good bead on it. Yeah. Even Diakese, over the course of that fight, ended up being a split decision just because it was so predictable. And
Tamor had no trouble with him at all.
Yeah, Tamor just was like, okay, I'll just be out here watching and waiting, and then I'll jump in and school you every minute and then go back out.
Yeah.
Venata is a competent combination striker. He has a lot of exciting tools in his bag that make him unpredictable. And he's, the Jackson Wink, one of the great things that they teach really well is good clinch fighting. Whether it's defensive or offensive, being able to break and get back to space or just control. They teach guys that really quite well. And so if he can compete with Close in the clinch, then he can outwork him everywhere else. It's just a question of the fact that he likes to square up and be in the pocket and throw long combinations that get him hit hard in return. And that he then, expends tons of energy throwing any and all forms of exciting strikes at any time. And it's just like, oh, I'm exhausted. Here's 3 wheel kicks. Yeah. So there's a chance that he just lets Close work back into this fight late and makes it ugly and tough. But you got to pick Venata to at least take the early 2 rounds.
And the problem with Close being good in the clinch but not very good anywhere else is there's going to be a lot of shit to walk through to get to the clinch. So
exactly.
There's a pretty good chance that Venata gets it done early, but if he doesn't is always the caution with these fights.
Odds on that fight. Come on. Venata is the favorite, opening at -245, getting up as high as -166, and falling back down to -181. Close opening at +175, dropping down as low as +142, and getting back up to +150. I like the odds more or less where they are right now. Venata deserves to be a favorite, but there's just always a concern with him and his inability to fight to his condition and to be defensively wide open. All right, that brings us to lightweight bout, Dan Hooker, Gilbert Burns, and gotta love this fight. Should be a lot of fun. I'm gonna pick Hooker, but not happily. Hooker is much better at throwing. He's learned to finally become an outside power striker and one who is fairly safe and crafty with his outside power strikes, where it used to be he wanted to be the clinch fighter. He wanted to be, be in the clinch or on the ground in a grappling scramble. And it turned out he just wasn't physical enough and didn't have the frame for it in the UFC. And then he struggled a ton to get and find what his range was and how to do that. And now he's done it. He's figured out how to be an outside counter striker who throws wicked power on counters and to just lead with good, crafty single shots. He can still be overwhelmed if you jump in on him and flurry. He can still kind of hangs his chin up in the air if he tries to, step in behind strikes and to get a little wild himself. But it's much more controlled than it used to be. Burns has been putting together a nice, solid, functional, hoof-esque Dutch kickboxing style of jumping in with power combinations, oftentimes behind a quick jab and then following up with a hook and low kick and all that. And then he's got a venomous grappling game. Thing is that he kind of gets predictable. He doesn't change. He doesn't wrestle unless he absolutely desperately has to. And that means that he's just kind of jumping in with a power kickboxing combo and then getting back outside and then jumping in with a power kickboxing combo and getting back outside. And that predictability means that he can get hurt. And when he gets hurt, he can wrestle. But that should give Hooker, I think it gives Hooker enough opportunities to pick him off. If Burns can take him down, can take Hooker down, I absolutely believe that Burns can sub Daniel Hooker. But I don't have quite enough faith to think he gets that early enough to stop himself from getting badly hurt.
Yeah, and it may be surprisingly difficult after it goes to the ground. Like Hooker's not a joke on the floor.
No.
He's actually, I think he's gotten notably better. But especially the big thing with Hooker has been, and they're doing something right in Australia, Zane, because Robert Whittaker has his small team, and then Hooker has his small team. But they both they're like Canelo Alvarez's team, where nobody knows who they are from any other fighters. They have no notable champions, but they clearly understand how their fighter style should work. They're actively working to improve that. The big thing with Hooker has been gaining an understanding of how he should be fighting.
Yep.
And I think he hit upon the right idea when he had that Jason Knight fight, but he hadn't really got it sorted yet. And so him constantly trying to create space read to Jason Knight like an invitation to be twice as aggressive, and then Hooker didn't know how to stop the momentum. Now we've seen he's clearly gotten better at knowing how to plant his feet. He's more about maintaining distance now than he is just about creating it. And so he's there ready to fire off hard shots. When you do get aggressive and come in hard, the knees, the uppercuts, the clinch, things like that are there to threaten you. And then when you're moving around in open space, he's got a very nice jab. He's still extremely hittable. There's no head movement at all, but he's got a very nice jab and a good left hook, and he can take a tremendous shot. So he tends to be in the difficult kind of fights. And I don't know. I don't know that Burns yet has I guess it's just a limitation of the Dutch style, but you're going to be in a fight of attrition if you want to use those 3-punch low kick combos, and otherwise you're just going to be, I don't know, crossing your fingers and hoping to get lucky with a big shot. It's going to be a hard fight though.
Yeah,
and that's tough because Burns still doesn't look all that happy to be striking a lot of the times. He's still it still feels kind of rote and forced, he has to make himself grit his teeth to prove that he can do it. And I think Hooker enjoys fighting. I think he really gets a kick out of the way he fights now too. It's a new exciting way of doing things to him. And for Burns, it's just the thing he's been trying to get over having to do since his MMA career started. So yeah, I think Hooker is going to have enough sense to get back up to his feet. And I think otherwise, every time Burns is forced to shoot, he is going to be having to get past a jab and then look out for a really, really deadly knee or something like that as he comes in. I like Hooker by close decision.
All right. And I'm just seeing, I think we may have lost a fight.
I
think Anthony Pettis is off the card.
Oh.
Let me just double check.
The injuries are back. We thought once the pressure of championship was off that maybe Anthony Pettis could become a regular fighter. But
I think saying bad weight cut. Well, I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot about it right now, but I think. Let me see.
You just love weight cutting, Zane.
Oh yeah.
It's really the spice of this sport. Never know what's going to happen, but half the time, it's not the scheduled fight.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is this is going to be a podcast saying this is too much. This is too much dead air. This is
All
some
right,
people are just listening to the audio.
Never mind. We'll just keep going until I can get a better read on what
we did 40 minutes on Holloway Ortega on heavy hands this week, Zane. All right.
Yeah. All right.
So
first bout of the. Wait, now I need to do the odds for. Yeah, Hooker Burns. Hooker is the favorite at the moment. Opened at -160 and was trucking along right in there until he jumped up pretty sharply in the last week, and has got up to 140 or -140 and has risen up to -128. So the odds closing on that one rapidly. Burns opening at +120 and was chugging along right there, got down to about +140 and then dropped down to +118, is currently at +105.
Something definitely changed because Venata Close is now on the Fox Sports 1 prelims.
Yeah.
But it seems to be that they moved Felder or Pettis to the main card.
Felder Perry has been moved to the main card, and Chiesa Pettis is off, I believe.
It's still on there for now, but we'll see.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just moved to make it a 5-fight main card. I might be getting confused here.
Yeah, it looks like they just moved Felder Perry in now, so the prelims are just in a different.
Okay.
Hopefully, that's all that changed.
Never mind. That's all that changed. Not another fight scrapped. Got myself confused here. All right. Whatever. All this shit. That brings us to Curtis Millender versus Max Griffin on the FS1 prelims. And
this is me, right? No.
Yeah,
you.
This is you.
Yes, because we're actually 4 fights in.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Max Griffin is clearly like the one good thing about that Mike Perry fight. I always think about it from the angle of, boy, it was terrible that Mike Perry suffered another one of those losses and he looked worse than ever. But Max Griffin looked far better than ever. Max Griffin saw an opportunity to prove that he could fight a smart, technical fight when he needed to, and he had the perfect strategy. He essentially had the same fight that Alan Jouban did with Mike Perry, with the only differences being that Perry was a little flatter, but also that Griffin didn't get hit nearly as much as Jouban did. Didn't have to fight his way out of trouble almost at all. He was just completely in control. Great sense of distance that we hadn't really seen from him before. Excellent job putting his punches together, getting in and out on angles, and a really nice kicking game as well that I don't think we'd seen a ton of from Griffin before that. So Griffin seems like a fighter, he's a good athlete and clearly can fight intelligently and strategically, so he may have a lot to offer. And that makes for an interesting matchup with Millender because Millender had a great performance against Thiago Alves, but I think both you and I were unsure of his chances in that fight before, and I'm still not sold on Millender.
Yeah, kind of also. A lot of that fight felt like Thiago Alves just didn't show up at all.
Yeah.
Anytime he was aggressive and pushed Millender at all, he actually did really well. But most of the fight, he just sat back and let a massive range striker just pick him off from the outside.
Millender's legs are probably the length of Max Griffin's entire body. And he likes to fight with a lot of kicks, this very wide stance. And essentially, if you're like Thiago Alves and you let him have that range, then he is just going to keep throwing awful. He's a very dangerous kicker. He's really good at it. And he's going to keep doing that. And the more momentum he gets, the more creative he gets. He can then start working off of that and building momentum.
Yep.
So the interesting thing is, after Max Griffin showed us that new wrinkle against Mike Perry, he's going to need a totally different kind of new wrinkle to beat the likes of Millender, because he's going to have to go back to being aggressive. But I don't know. The thing is, it might actually work for Max Griffin to do the old kind of Max Griffin fight, even without a lot more craft, just being aggressive and getting in there. Might be the trick. But
I mean,
Melender
it worked for Fernando Gonzalez and Brennan Ward, you know? Like,
yeah. I think that'll happen. I think Max Griffin is. I mean, he at least proved he can adjust his style for the opponent and pick the right kind of fight. If he does so again successfully and makes the right choice, then Melender's probably gonna end up on the back foot a lot more than he wants to be.
yeah, Melender. The big thing with Melender is that he tricks you into thinking he's a counter puncher because he's a very patient lead fighter. He wants to throw first, but he's very like outside, slow. Here's one shot at a time, and it tricks people into thinking, oh, he's waiting on the counter. If I pressure him, he's gonna wreck me. And really, if you pressure him, he mostly just kind of backs up and freaks out.
Yeah.
And he's very not hard to take down because of that too. And so, it's all about, can you stay on him? Can you stay after him? And if you do, you'll probably win.
And Griffin's not even a bad wrestler either.
No. So Griffin is totally capable of winning this fight. And he's tough enough. We know that he's unlikely to get knocked out by any one shot. He got TKO'd by Colby Covington after 3 rounds of steady ground and pound. He's never been one shot KO'd, and that Zaleski fight was a war.
Mm-hmm.
So if Melender can't take him out with one punch, I have a lot more faith in Max Griffin's toughness and busyness to see him through it. All right. Griffin is the underdog, opened at plus 150 and has slid down steadily to plus 140. Melender opened at minus 190, got up as high as minus 160, or got up to 167, more or less evened out, currently at minus 169. I guess people still put a lot of stock in beating Thiago Alves. That's all I can really
fair enough, because Alves is still clearly capable of beating good fighters. It just seems like he's really style dependent at this point. He couldn't change the way he was fighting against Melender, just tried to counterpunch him, which won't work.
Yeah, it's true. All right, that brings us to Rafael Assunção versus Rob Font. And this is a really good fight because in a lot of ways it's going to be kind of like Rafael Assunção versus Marlon Moraes, where you've got Assunção, the busier, more low power, high volume, work behind the jab, not really create any never take himself out of a defensive position, never really put himself in danger, Bisping-esque kind of fighter, against a more powerful kickboxer who's looking to land big power shots and be creative and make that work for him. Part of me thinks I should pick Font just because I kind of feel like Assunção has to slip up sooner or later. Yeah. And that Moraes fight was razor close. Even the Sterling fight was close once Sterling actually started sitting down on his punches and letting them go. He teed off on Assunção a bit late in that fight. But at the same time, Assunção just tends to beat everyone except the very, very best fighters.
Yeah, he does tend to beat everyone.
Tends to win all the time. He's impossible to take down. He's a very good grappler, and he's just works like a busy, jab-happy game that causes people a ton of trouble. Font has improved dramatically. He's definitely adding enough depth of craft to his game, enough technical ability and movement, so that he's no longer just sort of a one-note power kickboxer that freezes up terribly against somebody like John Lineker. What he showed against Thomas Almeida was somebody who can make adjustments, who can get through tough moments in a fight and won't panic like he did against Pedro Munhoz quite as badly. But there's still like that moment of panic against Pedro Munhoz. There's still a guy who can get caught flat-footed a bit and be thrown off. It's just, does Rafael Assunção offer any of the kind of venom in his striking to scare Rob Font off at any moment? Because he kind of tends not to. I know he just knocked out Matthew Lopez, but Lopez is really wild and unstructured and doesn't have any of the technique that Font does standing. So I think I'm going to take a flyer on Rob Font on this one. I think I'm going to take his consistent power kickboxing and his growing faith in his technical striking to land the better shots against Assunção and just take out a narrow decision that you feel like Assunção maybe could have won, should have won. Might be like the Moraes fight where he squeaks out a split decision where people are like, no, Marlon Moraes really did win that fight, But what the hell? I'll go for it.
Yeah, it's a very tough fight to call. It's because Assunção doesn't offer that kind of pressure and aggression that has given Font problems, whether against Munoz or against Lineker or even in spots against Almeida. Like, the thing that seems to trouble Font really is heavy pressure. But that being said, like, Assunção has successfully fought long-range fights against more experienced and more crafty strikers than Rob Font. Like, Font does basic things very well. He keeps a jab out there. I wouldn't say he's got like a great jab. It's not like he tends to bust people's faces up with it, or like Calvin Kattar, like snap off 3 jabs in a row and then go dancing off at a different angle. But he does keep the jab going, and that's fine because what he really wants to do is set up his right hand, which is extremely powerful, and he can do that from long range and change the rhythm up and find different positions from which to basically, if he gets you reacting to his jab, then he will find a way to put that right hand on your chin. But like Assunção has dealt with that kind of stuff a lot. He dealt with it very successfully against the likes of TJ Dillashaw, and I think has a very good case for winning the first fight he had with Dillashaw. Hit Dillashaw with some nasty counters while Dillashaw was trying to pressure. And that's the thing. Like, Font, it's hard to imagine a fight like this in which Font doesn't get the kind of fight he wants, but Assunção doesn't have ample chances to punish him and find the chinks in that sort of game plan. So it does feel like Assunção's got to slip up, but do I trust Font yet to? Thing is, every time you think that somebody's just got to fight this way against Assunção, and they don't manage to do it. Because he just nullifies and drags them into a slow pace and then kind of does what he wants. It's not always that impressive or that fun, but I think I'll stick with Assunção. I definitely see where you're coming from, though, because he's got to slip up at some point, and like, the game plan doesn't seem that complicated for how to fight him, but once you start dealing with his speed and his creativity and his extremely well-rounded technical skill, I think it in practice becomes a lot more difficult to like pressure him or keep the pace up.
One of the things that I really like about Font in this fight over fight like Dillashaw or even Moraes is that Font's reach is huge.
Yeah.
And like his reach is even slightly longer than Aljamain Sterling's, and that I think is one of the big reasons that Sterling, when he finally punched, was able to actually hurt Assunção and do damage. It's 4.5 inches longer than Dillashaw's or Moraes's.
Yeah, that makes a kind of sense to me. But then I also think, like, well, what if Font is just like 1-2ing over and over, and Assunção realizes all he has to watch out for is the right hand?
Yeah.
And then can he? Yeah. The reach is it could be a big factor. I'll stick with Assunção. Keep it interesting.
I'm gonna take Font because I think it's gonna be one of those sad things where Assunção never got a title shot that he very clearly should have been in line for.
Yeah.
And then he's buried on this prelim card against a guy he really shouldn't be fighting, and it just feels like some weird fate a long-limbed, power-punching featherweight, or bantamweight, rather.
Rafael Assunção will go down in history as one of the most underrated fighters ever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He's easily underrated because his style is sometimes quite tedious, but he's really, really good at this. And it would be a real shame if like Font was the guy to knock him off, and that was like the last chance Assunção had to stay in the picture. Yeah, it might be the case.
All right. Rafael Assunção is the favorite at the moment. Opened at -270, adjusted up to -170, and is currently at -176. Rob Font opened at +190, adjusted down to +146, and that's where it stayed. Those lines haven't moved at all. I'm not surprised Assunção is the favorite. He deserves to be. He's got the much better resume. He's the more technical, well-rounded fighter over the course of his entire game. I think it's just partially too that like Assunção is just going to give Font exactly the fight Font wants. He's not going to push any different kind of fight. He's not going to wrestle him. He's not going to, force him into a grappling battle. Might be a little dangerous for Font if Font decides that he's got a habit of like trying for takedowns and trying to implement, like trying to be more well-rounded.
Yeah.
And if he just decides like, oh, I'm, doing pretty well on the feet, but let's try and mix in a takedown here and take this guy down and all that. Assunção was a really, really good, dangerous grappler. So
I think that happens a lot against Assunção too. Is like, okay, I'm not having success, but nothing's really coming back at me. Okay, I'm going to start getting loose, and then something awful happens.
Yeah, he had like that arm bar over Von Lee, and he's had a few arm bars, I believe, off his back and triangles off his back, where people have just been like, oh, well, fine, I guess I'll try to take this guy to the ground and like change things up a little because this fight's just not. Neither of us are doing anything, and then suddenly he's a really, really talented grappler. But I don't know. I'm feeling Font this time. Middleweight bout next: Uriah Hall, Paulo Costa, and I'm gonna take Costa. That's really Uriah Hall is probably he's more singularly remarkable, and he's probably a better wrestler, actually, a better offensive wrestler, not defensively. He's always been a porous defensive wrestler. But actually, in terms of functional, like moment-to-moment kickboxing, Costa's just better and doesn't seem like he checks out. He's he's Uberlandia Reem, right? That's
God, I forgot about that nickname. It's so good.
It is.
It's very cumbersome, but like that's appropriate.
He has that classic Alistair Overeem kickboxing style without the chinniness of just stalking you down, throwing huge body and leg kicks and big power hooks, and just being patient and being a bully.
Yeah.
And Uriah Hall is good when he's best when he's facing serious adversity, but against somebody who's as composed as Costa and who's as just willing, like giving him all that chance to bully you, and like that just means giving Costa exactly the fight he wants, And we've seen like Uriah Hall has had fights like the Krzysztof Jotko fight and the
Robert Whittaker fight was a good performance from him too.
Yeah, the Whittaker fight was a good performance, but he still lost it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen. I assume what you were saying is we've seen fights where he like fights back.
We've seen fights like Jotko and like Thiago Santos where he gets to the point of being wrecked and comes back to win.
That happened, yeah. In the Whittaker fight, he didn't come back to win, but he did have to come back from being badly hurt, and he was in a tough back and forth fight.
But we've also seen fights like the Gegard Mousasi fight, the Derek Brunson fight, and those fights like where he's just been wrecked, where he's just come out and been bullied and been pushed around and been beaten up in an instant. And then we've seen fights like the Rafael Natal fight and John Howard and Kelvin Gastelum, where just bullying him even without like doing any serious damage was more than enough to win.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that he could catch Costa just walking forward on him and catch him with something electrifying. But Paulo Costa is not Oluwala Bamboj, and he's a better athlete than Krzysztof Jotko, and Krzysztof Jotko nearly killed the man. So I got to take him here.
Yeah, there's very little reason not to. Like, isn't Uriah Hall's whole brand like having hangups about bullying? Isn't that like his whole backstory? Like, one of the reasons he was so weird and prickly in in personality wise on The Ultimate Fighter was that he'd been like bullied as a kid. That was the thing he always mentioned. And yeah, you can bully him in the ring and be successful. Tends to work. It tends to be what shuts him down. And either that or like he's worried about being a bully, and so he's too nice to you. But it all comes down to like the weird sort of dominance you need to be able to accept to be a really consistent high-level fighter. Paulo Costa has absolutely no reservations about bullying the hell out of people. And the bully thing, like with Reem, is often said as both a positive and a negative, but he doesn't seem to have a lot of the negatives that have haunted Reem throughout his career.
Yeah, the bully thing was a negative for Overeem because he had a bad chin. That was literally the only thing. Like, well, I guess, and he broke when you started to test it. It wasn't even so much his chin was bad as that he would then freak out if you. The chin
and the insecurity are a chicken and egg kind of thing, but the folding was a big issue, and Costa doesn't seem to so far to have the chin issue. Nor does he at all seem to have the folding issue. In fact,
not having the chin issue may just be not having the folding issue because he doesn't. He trusts. It's like, oh, I'm bullying you, and you can't hurt me. Yeah,
and he fights like a power puncher too. Like he just steps in with multiple hard shots. He has no fear of what's coming back at him as a result of that. And I still remember that fight with, I guess it was the Bang Bosch fight. And the really notable thing was, I know I've mentioned this before, but the really notable thing was how absolutely gassed he was. And the fact that even that was not enough for his confidence to waver at all. He listened to his corner. He came out in the second round, was tired, but went back to doing exactly the right thing at a more measured pace and quickly won the fight. So, yeah, that kind of consistency and aggression just seems like exactly what I would expect to beat Uriah Hall. So. It's as simple as that.
He's much more technically composed than Thiago Santos. So the avenues for fighting your way back into a fight when he's winning, they're a lot slimmer.
Plus, just like a pretty disciplined striker, he's gonna look at the Johnny Hendricks fight. He's gonna use all limbs. He's gonna work the body. He's gonna throw combos. He's scary, man. He's well put together.
All right. Odds on that fight. Uriah Hall is a major underdog. Opened at plus 210, adjusted up and down to plus 326, and is currently at plus 318. Paulo Costa opened at minus 290, adjusted up and down to minus 426, and is currently minus 414. I do feel like at some point we're going to see a major crack in Costa's game that we just don't expect. And so, like, I kind of hesitate at odds like that, but it's hard to see, like, a incredibly bullyable fighter and a highly bullying fighter in the ring together and not think, he deserves to be a big favorite.
Hall has gotten slightly better in weird ways, considering that he's, like, had a 3-fight losing streak just before his most recent win and may have lost that one as well. But
he's gotten better at when he's shelling up, at like finding the chance to fire off like a quick power counter.
He's gotten better at fighting back, which is what he'll need here. But the problem with fighting back as your like only hope of your only reliable hope of winning the fight is that like you have to be in a fight first. Like fighting back implies that Costa is going to be doing what he wants to do, which is backing you up and forcing you in a situation where you either swing back or go down. And
he just seems much more. He's a better athlete. He's less likely to get surprised than Jotko by a speed difference. And he's more composed than most of the other, than a lot of other guys who get into that situation. He seems like that Hendricks fight. He seems a lot less likely to gas himself out just trying to unload on you. It's sort of like, well, I've got you on the ropes. Take a step back, figure out where
that's a good point. Comparing that to the Bang Bosch fight, like he was already more disciplined and measured. over the course of just from one performance to the next.
So, it looks good.
Yep.
All right, that brings us to a light heavyweight bout: Gokhan Saki versus Khalil Roundtree. And wait, is this you?
I don't. Sure.
I think it's you. Go
ahead.
This
fight is a ridiculous mess. Like parallels with the Israel Adesanya fight in that they must have looked at Gokhan Saki's last fight where he like almost got destroyed by Frank Waston and been like, who else is not going to have a decent chance of beating him in this division? Okay, let's go with the guy who's going to kickbox with him. Khalil Roundtree. Yeah, yep. So it's basically like it's still not like an overall easy fight to call. If it were like kickboxing rules, I would absolutely take Saki over someone like Roundtree every day. And the problem is that like Saki didn't seem to know how to balance his kickboxing skill against the realities of an MMA fight last time. So he kept like ending up in these tie-ups and stuff and then exhausting himself because he was expecting just to have a measured pace where he could fire off 3-4 punch combos every now and then.
The problem is that Khalil Roundtree also has the same problem.
Yes, exactly. Roundtree, I trust Roundtree so much less than I trust someone like Tavares to use his MMA skills.
Yeah.
Because he pretty much never does.
Yep.
And B, he is not going to be like forcing these ugly exchanges on Saki like Frank Waston did. Because it's not how he fights. He likes to fire off single shots. Saki can be hit. It's still going to be a dangerous kind of fight. Roundtree's very dangerous. But Saki is an extremely good kickboxer.
It's hard to see the way Khalil Roundtree lost to Michael Alexejczyk, who is like just a pure IQ test fight.
Yes.
Here's a dude who can be hit at will, but he's tough as shit. And if you exhaust yourself hitting him, he will come back and just pitter-pat his way through you to victory. What are you going to do? And Roundtree's like, well, I guess I better try to hit him as hard as possible, as much as possible early on. And when that doesn't work, I won't have a backup plan.
Yeah. Whereas, like, if you start showing Saki that kind of, like, defeatedness, he is going to tear through you. And you would have to be able to change levels for a takedown to change that.
Yep. So I want to pick Roundtree, but I literally cannot remember if I've ever seen him shoot, like, a solid blast double or just like chain a takedown attempt. So
you can also imagine what would happen to him if somebody like Roundtree did go for a half-hearted attempt and then it was stuffed. I think it might break him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I don't know. I just don't. Saki's a friggin' warrior. I just don't see him losing this.
And, Saki did show sort of like the same Israel Adesanya thing, too, where it's like if you're going to try to put him up against the cage and go for an upper body lock takedown, he actually works pretty hard to stuff those and has like a good idea of how to stop the clinch from being used against him. So you really do actually have to get in on his hips and legs. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to pull him in and get a trip takedown. A lot of kickboxers seem to have a reasonable amount of defense for that.
Because they do trips and shit in the clinch. Like, it's not completely alien.
Yeah. Saki opened at -177, adjusted up and down to -181, and has risen steadily ever since. He's currently at -137. Khalil Roundtree opened at +143, adjusted up and down to +155, and has dropped steadily to +112. I think Saki should still be a favorite. I mean, I know that's trending towards even, but Roundtree actually has to prove that he can fight a smart fight, and he never has. Like, Daniel Jolly and Paul Craig are not guys you have to fight well against. They just aren't. And everyone else, Andrew Sanchez, Tyson Pedro, Michael Alexejczyk, have just beat him. So. And
the Alexejczyk fight is really damning.
Yeah. It really is, because that is you should be smart enough to fix this by now.
Because that tells you, like, not only are you walking a tightrope when you strike against grapplers, but apparently that's the kind of matchup you're best at. And when you actually have to strike with a striker, you can't figure out the matchup.
Yeah,
which is not good when you're fighting Saki. I wouldn't think so.
All right, lightweight bout next. Michael Chiesa, Anthony Pettis. Fight still on. Just I got confused. Somebody was trolling in the chat, and I was like, What?
No,
Okay,
fucking chat trolls.
I know.
Well, you shouldn't read the chat, Zane. Don't.
I'm trying to stop people from
No. Never interact with the fans.
unusable. But anyway, Chiesa Pettis. This fight should be difficult to call, but I don't have any faith in Anthony Pettis. That's really all it comes down to. It's mostly a physical faith thing. Like Chiesa needs jiu-jitsu, so his striking hasn't improved in a decade. But he's got some serious funk wrestling and grappling to him. And Dustin Poirier just didn't have to work that hard to get Anthony Pettis down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they traded a few times on the feet. Anthony Pettis was like, okay, in open space. Then Dustin Poirier just kind of threw like a long overhand, got Pettis up against the fence, locked his hands around his waist, picked him up, and slammed him.
It's the same exact shit. It still comes down to, if you can put him against the fence, which secret you can, then you can take him down.
And even against Kevin Lee, Michael Chiesa had that success early. He just kind of swarmed forward, grabbed Kevin Lee, pushed him over, and got on top of him.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Lee was able to reverse that and work through it. And there was a time when Pettis was a crafty enough grappler to, really snap something up and make something happen there. But I don't really feel like that time exists anymore. So there's certainly, Chiesa's still a pretty one-note striker who's going to have lots of defensive flaws that somebody can exploit, but he's going to be coming forward consistently, pushing to get Pettis down, and as long as he's doing that, I don't trust Pettis to stay up, and I don't trust Pettis to beat him on the mat.
Yeah. I mean, it'll probably be a while yet, depending on how long he keeps fighting, before you can safely write Anthony Pettis off.
Yeah, no.
Like, I'm sure Michael, when he looks at Michael Chiesa, it's like when like the guy on the desert island looks at his buddy and sees like a big hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Pettis must just see one giant liver with Michael Chiesa's frame and just wide open defense. Like, the opportunities are going to be there.
Yep.
But it's not going to be in the kind of fight that suits Anthony Pettis. And that's the problem, is like, you look at his recent record, and like Jim Miller, who is really now looking like he's probably not long for this sport, is the only like good looking win among Anthony Pettis' last 6 or 7 fights. The last win other than that, and it's 5 losses here. The last one before that was Charles Oliveira, and that was a war where, like, Anthony Pettis, for all I recall, could have been down at the time that he finally got the finish.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, like,
taken down a lot and giving Oliveira was getting his back a lot, and then Pettis was spinning through guard and ending up on top. And it was the exact same thing he was trying to do to Dustin Poirier, something he's always been very good at. And then when he did it against Dustin Poirier, he got
his rib exploded.
Yeah, his rib exploded. And that's kind of thing like that especially gives me pause these days, is just that Anthony Pettis, even when he was getting hurt between fights and not fighting as often as he should have, in fights he was always ridiculously, amazingly durable.
Yeah,
somebody who would just soak up punishment after punishment after punishment. Now he seems like somebody, Max Holloway broke his hand. Dustin Poirier broke a rib or injured a rib. And it just seems like as that durability and that physicality is starting to fade, then
how long before he goes for a Showtime kick and like his foot goes through the chain link and then just snaps off his leg?
Yeah.
Like, he's falling apart.
Yeah.
The wear and tear is really getting to him. And Chiesa is exactly the kind of fighter who is willing to soak up wear and tear over the course of a single fight if it means getting the kind of bout he wants, which is something that is messy and has a lot of time spent in the clinch and looking for the back on the ground. And like, again, like against Oliveira, Pettis could be really dangerous from the ground. He's got a phenomenal submission game, but it's going to be in Chiesa's kind of fight. And that's what it really comes down to, I think. So I tend to agree.
Odds on that fight, Chiesa opened at -150, adjusted up and down to -145, and has fallen steadily out to -161. Pettis opened at +110 and has risen steadily up to +134. I mean, I'm not writing Pettis off, and I don't know if those odds could be way wider, but I do think they could be a little wider. I guess the only thing being with Chiesa is that he hasn't fought much at all lately. Like, he hasn't fought since he fought Kevin Lee back in June of last year, and before that, it was a year when he fought Beneil Dariush, and before that, it was, then it was more regular. He was fighting in 2015, 14 and on, but past couple of years, he's only fought once a year.
What's the deal with that? It's not like he's been getting injured or anything.
Yeah, no, he's been getting injured, I think.
The fight with Pettis fell through because of the bus attack.
Yeah, because of the bus attack. But before then, I think he's just been picking up random injuries in training.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. But I don't know. Kevin Lee or Michael Chiesa still doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who, even after a layoff, would not fight exactly the way he's always fought.
Yeah, exactly. So. All right, that brings us to a welterweight bout, Paul Felder versus Mike Perry. And Felder should win this because the book on Perry has been really firmly written, and he's not improving fast enough to rewrite that book. It's stay away, stay outside, pick your shots, be just considerate at all times of the fact that Perry's got a ton of power. And Perry's otherwise, he's not so otherworldly fast or amazing at closing distance that if you don't brawl with him, he's just going to catch you out cold.
He used to be better. Like the Griffin fight, he really looked worn out, overtrained, beat up, slow.
Yeah.
Fragile.
And he's jumping right back in again. So had this been against Yanti Medeiros, I would pick Perry all the time. Medeiros tends to just fight in these little offensive bursts that leave him defensively wide open.
But even in that matchup, it would have been a friggin' violence fest as long as it lasted. Perry, they're just going to grind Perry to dust.
Probably. The concern with Felder is that if you push Felder back, which Perry will do, Perry will pressure him. Felder has a habit of finding the fence and sitting on it. He likes to just he likes to think that he's going to counter off the fence and be slick. And he likes to clinch. So he'll get back to the fence and kind of sit on it and then reach for the clinch. And the thing is that Felder is actually, he's a violent clinch fighter, but he's not actually a very good one, which is kind of a weird difference where he can land single huge strikes that if he has a bunch of time to set them up, he'll find a way to just unleash a single moment of violence. But in the meantime, he tends to just kind of be really lackadaisical and just hang out and let people do what they want. Charles Oliveira got to the clinch and just pulled him down immediately, uncontested. And same thing happened against Ray for a while. He was just Ray was getting to the clinch and just kind of holding on to him and hanging out and throwing knees. And then Felder separated and uncorked a huge elbow. But against Trinaldo, he just got into the clinch and just kind of got sucked into Trinaldo's fight.
He and Ray were just trading positions, switching from one guy against the fence to the other guy. And even when he had open space behind him, Felder likes the clinch enough that he wanted to stay there. Yeah,
he's not an active clinch fighter for how violent a one can be.
The biggest difference between Felder and a lot of other fighters we see in the clinch in MMA is just that he's willing and aware of his options.
Yeah.
So many MMA fighters still don't use their elbows like that in the clinch. They don't look to play knees off elbows and play those little pick your poison games that Matt Brown sort of made notable in this sport. And Felder he's aware of those things, but he's not super active or technical in pursuing them. And you're probably about to say this, but the trouble is Mike Perry also likes the clinch and is pretty dangerous there.
Yeah, Mike Perry is dangerous in the clinch. The biggest thing I was going to say is that with the amount of power Perry has, if Felder is going to sit himself against the fence and look for clinch areas where he's not going to be immediately dangerous, he is going to put himself in positions to get hit. Now, the flip side of that is he's got a great chin. He's never been knocked out. So,
and no weight cut this time around.
Yeah, no weight cut. So he is durable enough to have me pick him regardless. One way or another, I trust Paul Felder to fight his way out of adversity and fight the smart fight and get through bad spots. But he might very easily, especially early while Perry's still fresh and still fast, he may put himself in a couple of really bad positions, just backing himself into the fence and letting Perry dictate pace. But beyond that, Perry just doesn't have nearly enough variety to his game. So I got to pick Felder. But, there's, especially with Felder going up in weight too, there's a fair chance he might just not have like the physicality to hang with Perry if that happens. But I'd have to see it to believe it. Perry's a classic kind of fighter who storms out of the gate and is really good for a few fights, and then everybody figures him out, and suddenly he's got to adjust because everybody's solved him. And that, there are a lot of fighters who've gotten to the UFC and you see him for a few fights like, oh, this guy's really tricky and crafty. What are people going to do? And suddenly everybody's like, oh, everybody has you scouted now. And that's where Mike Perry is. So until I see him change, I assume that Paul Felder has him scouted. Yeah.
There's no reason to think like if Alan Jouban, Santiago Ponzinibbio, and Max Griffin all couldn't win exactly the same fight against you, then what's to stop me from doing it? The thing is like it feels weird to say this because I do feel like I've been tracking Paul Felder's progress since he came to the UFC over the last couple of years and like seeing little improvements here and there, but not that much has really changed in how I would describe him as a fighter. We've seen more ground and pound out of him, but it's just like one more thing he likes to do. The thing is I still don't have a sense that Paul Felder is a very good strategist, a very good strategic fighter at all.
Yeah.
He like deciding what kind of fight is the best kind of fight is the biggest problem. Whether that means, letting the opponent push you up against the fence and not doing much, or if he is put on the back foot, like I don't know, is he going to choose the right strike? I just don't know. Like, he's a lot craftier and a lot more technically skilled. Has a more diverse set of skills and just much sharper skills overall than a guy like Perry. He's a better schooled fighter. And so, like, if he's in a sort of sparring match with a guy like Mike Perry, there is absolutely no reason that he can't slip all the shots, land the counters, poke away, and cruise his way to victory. But if Perry's even a little bit rejuvenated, or if Felder can't handle the physicality, or just makes one early mistake, like, there's also no reason that Perry can't just go nuts and throw 3 or 4 shots that it's screw technique. It's all about horsepower and make something happen because Felder is going to be just kind of on cruise control a lot of the time. So I'm kind of inclined to pick Felder because I do think he's if there's going to be any matchup where you don't have an idea, like where you should have if there's any matchup where the idea of how to fight this guy should be obvious, it's this one. You have literally seen 3 different fighters all do almost the exact same thing to him. So it's got to be out there for him. And I'm also kind of worried that Perry's going to look even worse than he did against Griffin because I don't know what his training situation has turned into now.
He's at a better camp. He's at ATT Orlando, I think.
ATT Orlando is not like even a...
It's not great, but it's at least got Caceres there now, and like...
It's probably better than what he had going on at the UFC.
It's better than training out of what's his name, Alex Nicholson's garage. Yes.
Yeah, or the UFC gym at which Alex Nicholson's dad is a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Who like sells steroids outside the locker room.
Yeah.
Like I hope, but at this point, like until I see Perry turn it around, kind of what you said, I have to see that before I can expect it.
Yeah.
So
against anybody who's been around the UFC a while enough to know, like, to see other fights and to know, okay, I actually have to scout people now and I actually have to take training seriously and all that. anybody who has a serious high-level camp should know how to beat Mike Perry if they can handle him physically.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's still got great talent, but I fear it has already been wasted.
Yeah, there is a slight fear of that. All right, that brings us to a heavyweight bout, co-main event. Oh wait, no, that brings us to the odds. Felder is the favorite, opening at plus 230, adjusting down to minus one. Adjusting down to minus 146. Really, just falling steadily from a major underdog to a sizable, reasonable favorite, and is just trended slowly downward to minus 155. Mike Perry opened at minus 270, bumped up all the way to plus 117, and is currently at plus 130. I think that's the right read on this.
It's fine.
That brings us to our co-main event: Francis Ngannou, Derrick Lewis, and this is you.
Yeah, so this fight is absurd. It's absurd. It might suck really badly. Because, like, I don't want to just repeat what we said on Heavy Hands this week, but this is essentially like either Francis Ngannou or Derrick Lewis is looking into a funhouse mirror and, like a dog who sees itself in the mirror, like they just feel immediately challenged. Except what happens to both of them when they feel challenged a lot of the times is that they just wait for the other guy to do something first. And so it's like two different looking versions of almost the same fighter. And I guess what it really comes down to for me is that Ngannou is just has a better basis for a working, adaptable game.
Yeah.
Than Derrick Lewis does. Like little details of technique. But like Derrick Lewis still lacks many things that I would call absolute basics, like how to put your punches together, how to move your feet.
Yep. If it weren't heavyweight, Derrick Lewis would be a pretty functionless fighter.
Yes, absolutely. It's all about preservation until the finish, as we've said many times. Ngannou has so many of those things in common in his style, except that he puts his punches together. Mm-hmm. He pulls and measures and throws timing off using his jab, and when he wants it to be, his footwork can be pretty good. He can cut some nice angles. He manages distance actively. He's just a better schooled version of the same kind of fighter. So I'm going with Francis Ngannou, and I'm curious to see what new wrinkles there may be in his game since he changed his whole training situation up.
Yeah, moved out to Syndicate.
Yeah,
and
hopefully Syndicate is better than just smashing like Ford Fiesta hoods at the UFC Performance Institute.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Lewis may have changed his training up as well, but he's still listed as being at the 4-ounce Fight Club, which Lewis's style of fighting in general seems like it's been locked in for a long time now because he's been training at the same place forever.
Yeah, OSP situation. I do feel like I heard recently that Derrick Lewis said that for much of his career, he only worked out 30 minutes a day.
I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Which is incredible and one of the best things I've ever heard. But, boy, it would be great if Derrick Lewis won this, wouldn't it? Like, what an absolute crash and burn for Ngannou as a prospect.
Yeah.
It could happen. That's what Derrick Lewis does.
Lewis punches as hard as anybody in the sport.
Oh, but also Ngannou does have a much better chin.
Yeah, Ngannou has a much better chin. That's a big thing.
That's what I just said, Zane.
And he's just more technical as a striker.
Yeah.
So this should be like what we've been talking about forever of like just kickbox with Lewis. Like
yes, finally someone who won't try to grapple with him.
Exactly. Just go out there and put hands on his chin. And, if fucking Sean Jordan can get it done, you should be able to too. Like, Mark Hunt clowned Derrick Lewis.
Yeah.
Just clowned him.
Travis Brown almost clowned Derrick Lewis and then clowned himself. I'm now realizing that this is heavyweight MMA, so the first thing Ngannou does is going to go looking for a snatch single and wind up on the bottom. That is going to happen right away.
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe the lesson Ngannou took away from that Stipe Miocic fight was, I need to improve my wrestling. It was like, why? You were really hard to take down in that fight until you were exhausted. You
Oh
should.
God, he's really going to try to wrestle Derrick Lewis. I bet he is.
He probably will, but he. It's just like all you need to do is improve your footwork, your distance management, and your use of power. Like you're setting up your power shots. You almost knocked Stipe Miocic out, and were impossibly hard to take down in that fight.
Could have won that fight with no technical improvements if he just settled the hell down.
Exactly.
Yeah, it still at any moment could have ended that fight.
Yeah.
But boy, he is going to shoot a double leg on Derrick Lewis. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, there's that. Anyway, I'm taking Ngannou as well, but if Lewis can just force him into a stupid fight like he does with so many people, then he's got a great chance to win it because he hits like a truck, and especially if Ngannou ends up on the bottom, Lewis's ground and pound is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Ngannou is a heavy favorite, opened at -230, dropped down to -308, and is skied out to -367.
It's a sorry ass replacement for Holloway Ortega. Sorry, not to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it is. And Lewis opened at +170, jumped up to +253, and has kept going uphill to +288. So odds are a little wide, but not that wide.
Fine.
Yeah, that brings us to our main event: Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier. And this is, unfortunately, I think a lot of this fight comes down to things that we don't know until they fight. Mostly, we don't know whether Daniel Cormier is going to be able to get Stipe Miocic down and hit takedowns. If he can't, then there's a good chance that Miocic has that first round that Volkan Ozdemir had with Daniel Cormier, except hits him hard enough to knock him out. Like, that's reasonable. If Miocic does not knock Daniel Cormier out early, and if Cormier can get Miocic down, I gotta pick Cormier. Cormier's a much craftier, more diverse kickboxer. It just is. I mean, Miocic is, it's all, he's got a decent counter punch when he finds it. It's not a hair trigger counter punch, but you swing a couple of hard shots at him, he'll come back with one. And otherwise, it's kind of entirely built around like long 1-2 and then flurry hooks behind it. And he will change up which hooks he flurries with. He'll throw double left hands or double right hands. He'll change where the 1-2 goes. It might go to the body. It might go to the head. But he gets pretty defensively wide open as he does it. And he kind of depends on guys just not being very good boxers under pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the most prescient things that Phil said this week, not on Heavy Hands, but like after we stopped recording, was, "What if heavyweight just sucks?"
Yeah, like that's
and it does. So
it does. This Stipe Miocic, he's good, but he's not like a fundamental technical wonder kid out there. Like most of his fights, he's winning. Like JDS thought he was fighting the perfect fight against Stipe Miocic last time out, backing himself into the cage, throwing leg kicks, and then just getting teed off on by long straight shots and then a flurry of hooks behind it.
Yeah.
Alistair Overeem almost knocked him out and almost choked him out. And
he did choke him out.
Verdum ran onto a punch.
Don't steamroll that thing. He did choke him out. Okay.
Yeah.
Stipe tapped. Alistair felt it.
Stipe tapped. I know. And then Ngannou almost won that fight. Like he almost won it again in like the fourth round.
Even in moments when Stipe was landing on him, like Ngannou would hit him with like half of a punch. And Stipe's head would nearly fly off his shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Cormier, he's never been like so deep a technical kickboxer that he could beat John Jones. but he's developed a pretty good, solid sort of far outside, jump in, like big single strikes and then clinch, tie up, uppercuts, and short hooks game. And he throws a nice, surprising head kick that he gets up really well and in a hurry. And he's always been fast for a heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been a good wrestler at heavyweight and light heavyweight.
One of the best in the sport.
So I got to go with DC. I mean, it may just be that he's old enough, he's slow enough and fragile enough at this point that Stipe can just bulldoze him, but Ozdemir couldn't. He tried and it didn't really have any success. Like, he just exhausted himself and then got beat up. So,
yeah.
Stipe is bigger and more powerful. There's an easy chance there for it, but I think that Cormier is just a better technical fighter everywhere.
Yeah, I'll defer with some of that slightly. Like, Miocic is a weird case because he's one of those. This is also something that Phil McKenzie said that I think I tend to agree with very strongly now. But he's one of those fighters who does seem to have a full skill set, but seems really, really locked into one way of fighting at a time.
Yeah.
I don't think Miocic is a very good adjuster.
No, I agree with that, definitely.
Rarely is he called upon much to adjust, I guess, because especially nowadays, he tends to knock people out really quickly. But his fights, there's quite a lot of separation between how he's fought certain guys. Like, you compare the Roy Nelson fight to even to the Fabricio Verdum fight, another one in which he got like a lot of good back foot shots off, but was doing a lot more kicking. And you compare that to the insane pressure in the JDS and Overeem fights, or to the really patient stick and move counterpunch shit he was doing against Ngannou. Like, I think he does have a full set of skills. I've also seen, older fights of his where he was chopping people down with leg kicks and can throw really nasty kicks. But he has to, my guess is he has to fully decide on what he's going to do, what's the right approach for this guy, and then he's locked in. And that's the issue. That's the tricky thing about this matchup to me, because a big question for me is who's going to get to pressure. DC has become quite effective at pressuring.
I think Stipe will pressure early. I think Stipe will get the pressure out of the gate, but after that, that's why I see kind of like the parallels to the Ozdemir fight, where Ozdemir gets to come out of the gate starting fast, and DC's just like, well, I'm going to weather this early storm and then adjust to what needs adjusting after that. Yeah,
and that's absolutely a possibility. And if DC pressures, Stipe can respond with much better back foot boxing than Cormier is just not a counterpuncher. He doesn't do well moving his feet and throwing punches at the same time or any of that. He generally, if he's going to put his punches together, he's got to be coming forward.
Yeah.
But to counter that, if Miocic is pressuring early, that's the window for DC to get his takedowns in. That's the window for him to change levels, grab a single leg, and then do all the stuff he likes to do to make the bigger man balance and work and fight against the single leg until eventually he gets him down. And unlike most heavyweights, most of them can't take someone like Miocic down, but B, most of them can't hold somebody like Miocic down. And Cormier has a really good top game. He's actually suffocating and very skillful in his jiu-jitsu and combines it with his wrestling really naturally.
What do you notice about this lineup I'm going to read you?
Yeah.
Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, Fabricio Verdum, Andre Arlovsky, Mark Hunt, Junior Dos Santos, Fabio Maldonado, Gabriel Gonzaga, Roy Nelson, Stefan Struve, Shane Del Rosario, Phil DeFries, and Joey Beltran.
Well, they're all NCAA Division I wrestlers, of course.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah, and that's a very good point.
Legitimately never fought somebody who wrestles.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Thing is Miocic hits even harder than Ozdemir.
Oh yeah.
He's got huge power.
He does.
And it's particularly effective in that pocket kind of range where Cormier is going to have to spend a lot of time there, hopefully just in passing from one range to another if he's smart. but especially early on, like it's going to be a lot of time spent in that dangerous range. And I do have the feeling that Cormier is nearing the end of his career.
Oh yeah, I mean we know he says he's nearing the end of his career.
Sure, he can feel it coming too, and it's always going to be. But even when you feel it coming, it's always a surprise when the end finally arrives. You're like, oh, okay, well now I can't argue against it. And I don't know, man. Like after that second John Jones fight, Cormier looked really good in that fight. He looked in phenomenal shape, better than he had in previous fights. He looked, and then compare that to just his physical preparation for the Oezdemir fight. He just looked like less good. He looked older. He looked a little chubbier. The weight cut was obviously harder. He didn't have quite the same speed or energy, and he got hit a lot in their early going there. And I don't know, like one thing Miocic is known for is maintaining his pace, and it's not like even if Cormier does get a takedown, he's going to probably finish the fight on the ground. Like Miocic,
he has never been a great ground and pound fighter.
Yeah, it's all a lot of control and wearing you down and making you work, but Miocic can work. And
well, we don't know if Miocic can work defensively on the ground. That's the thing. Like he's never had to.
Sure, but we know he can keep up a pretty crazy pace.
Yeah.
Cormier can too, but then like again, Miocic has the power to fall back on. Has a lot of the things that Cormier used to be a more powerful heavyweight. You know, I just don't know what he's going to look like at heavyweight. I don't know where he's at right now. I just feel like there'll be other times when I would feel more comfortable picking DC, but right now it feels like Stipe is in the right place at the right time. So I think he's gonna hurt Cormier. And,
Stipe is an amazingly easy fighter to underestimate, and partially I think it is because he, like you say, he does get so tracked in that you really you go watch his fights and you really kind of only see one dimension of Miocic in any given fight.
But it's almost always the right way to fight that guy. You know, like it's not like you can't criticize him for fighting stupidly against Ngannou or Overeem, and even when it means facing down risk, like getting knocked down by Overeem, he did not err from the path for a second. No. He went right back. He pressured him twice as hard because he knew that was the best way to prevent another knockdown like that from occurring, was to get in his face. So the thing with Miocic is like I think I've had such a hard time, you know, like correctly picking all of his many wins because he's a smart fighter with a smart team who makes the right decisions on how he's going to fight people.
Yeah. So the question is, does he come out and counterpunch DC and wait to light him up in the pocket? Because that's probably the right way to fight DC.
Or does he try to keep a jab in his chest and try to push him back and, I don't know, force DC to only shoot from longer range? Can you do something like that? Probably, because like DC's not that great fighting off the back foot.
No, that's true.
So it's really just the takedown off the back foot that makes it hard. That would make it hard for Stipe to pressure. So
yeah,
I'm going with Stipe. I think it might be a TKO or a KO.
I think if Stipe wins, it's going to be a KO.
Yeah.
If he doesn't knock him out, then I kind of feel like Cormier's going to find a way. Going to be a little faster and dynamic and better able to throw a larger variety of strikes that catch him off guard. And
yeah, I don't know how good Cormier is at like adapting per se, but he's definitely like he's comfortable just changing up his tactics and continuing to push.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see DC win. I love DC, but I don't know.
All right. Well, I'm taking a flyer on him. Cormier is the underdog, opening at plus 140 and rising up steadily to plus 231 and has dropped back down to plus 194. And Miocic opened at minus 170, dropped down to minus 190 or so, and then got up as high as minus 182 before dropping sharply down to minus 283 and has been rising steadily back up to minus 240. So basically anytime these odds have swung, or the moment these odds swung out too wide, they've closed right back up.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, we should wrap things up. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneTime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush, BUSCH. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com day in, day out. We will be back next week for UFC Fight Night, Dos Santos versus Ivanov in Boise.
I can't fucking wait.
I mean, it actually has some fun fights on it. Miles Jury's fighting Chad Mendez, Dennis Bermudez, Rick Glenn, Volkanovski, Elkins.
I'm down for a lot of that, actually. But the main event, why isn't Volkanovski Elkins the main event?
That's a good question.
So it'd be a much more entertaining main event probably than Blagoy Ivanov versus a shot JDS.
Yeah. Well, either way, we'll be back for that. So give us a like, thumbs up on YouTube down there, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM, all spelled out. That's where you'll find all the latest Buddy Elbow shows, videos, analysis, all that stuff we do week in, week out. We'll be back soon, and thanks everyone for watching. And I'll be back for the 6th round probably after both cards. So stay tuned for that. Adios.